Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with our discussion of 1970s disaster movies. And today, I'd like to speak about a film that was released in 1978. And this is a film that is from director Corey Allen and producer Roger Corman. And it stars, among others, in its great cast, participants and actors such as Robert Forster and Rock Hudson and Mia Farrow, in a film that is, I think, a very healthy serving of soap opera melodrama in terms of a real heightened intensity. And we have this very remote location of this ski lodge resort. And then we have the disaster that looms, and we see the impact of that and how this community of characters tries to cope and deal with this wide-reaching disaster, which is known as Avalanche. This is the Kino Lorber Blu-ray that was released some time back, and it is a film that I'm not sure if it's held in as high regard as, say, other films in the 1970s disaster genre, like The Poseidon Adventure or The Towering Inferno, or other film, or Earthquake. But still, Avalanche is a film that is, I think, very much part of the fabric of 1970s disaster movies. It does come at the tail end, the latter half of the 1970s, and so some people might think that the 1970s disaster movies began to weaken around the middle part of the decade, and it led to the end of the decade, where we had films that might not necessarily be as critically regarded as, say, films that came in the earlier part of the decade. So in that sense, Avalanche comes in the latter half of the decade, and so perhaps for some it might be seen as one of the not so successful examples of 1970s disaster movies. And if that's the case for you, then that's perfectly fine. I can understand that. I can see where this film might not necessarily be for everyone, where it might fall in terms of an entertaining 70s disaster flick. Right, because it is a very intensely established network of characters that reach heights of soap opera that are just off the charts in some places. I mean, totally off the charts. And we have wives and husbands and exes and coming together, and it all is part of this tapestry of this ski lodge. And there is the threat of some kind of potential avalanche. There is the dynamic that is introduced when Mia Farrow's character comes in, and we understand the relationship dynamic, the love triangle that develops in terms of the characters played by Mia Farrow and Rock Hudson and Robert Forster. And we have the character of Rock Hudson, who is this leader type, but perhaps he might be someone who is swayed by his own emotions and his own sense of self, and that might get the better of him. But this is where I think the film finds a lot of its strength, and I'll try to explain. First of all, I think the character I was mentioning of Rock Hudson experiences a really interesting character arc, a development arc over the course of the film. At the start of the film, he might be seen as somewhat of an antagonist, especially when we meet Mia Farrow and Robert Forster's characters. But as the film progresses and as the titular event, Avalanche, occurs, which is the huge disaster event of the film, we see his character change and adapt, and he becomes, or his character experiences a type of arc that is, I think, very much on the side of the protagonist or even the heroic. And so that arc is a really fascinating one. And I think, given the subject matter, I think that Rock Hudson plays it very well, very, very well for what it is. And it really gives a sense of what's the word, gravitas. And he never pokes fun at the material. You can get a sense that he really is taking this very seriously. And so I think that helps a lot. I think it helps also to balance out the other aspects of some of the supporting characters and the real heavy doses of soap opera drama. I mean, this is really laid on quite thick. And some might think that it goes a little bit overboard, but actually, I think it does a couple of things. The Rock Hudson, Mia Farrow, Robert Forster arc, I think, helps to temper or balance out the otherwise soap opera aspects of the character dynamics we find elsewhere. And I should say also that even the soap opera aspects can have their own source of entertainment factor. Because we see the extreme extents to which some of these character story arcs are taken, up to the point that the avalanche in question occurs. And so I think that also has the potential for providing some degrees, or at least certain degrees of entertainment. So we're getting, I think, a lot of variance here in terms of the character development, which the more I think about it, the more I realize that perhaps that's one of the strengths of the film. And then we get the avalanche itself and this huge set piece. One of the things that's really difficult, I think, in a disaster film is not just defining what the disaster is, but also trying to set the parameters of the scope and the environment within which the disaster takes place. Sometimes if we have a disaster film that has a very set and definable range of parameters, like a boat or a ship in films like Grey Lady Down or The Poseidon Adventure, or some kind of building structure like, say, the Towering Inferno. I think those are very easy to understand from the viewer's point of view, because these are environments or structures that are set and finite. When we have a film that is a widespread disaster that is taking place over a wide expanse of environment and land, I think sometimes that sense of geography might get lost. So it takes a lot of skill, I think, on the part of filmmakers to try to make sure that we as viewers understand what the geography is. I think certain films do this very well. For instance, films like Earthquake, and also maybe a film like, say, City on Fire, which is another interesting film. I hope to be able to talk about that one in a future video. And also, I should say that Avalanche, I think, does a really good job with this, because we understand certain structures of the ski lodge resort. We also understand certain structures in terms of the various points of the ski resort itself, outside, outdoors, and also the various environments that are involved. It's not just people outside. There are some people outside. There are some people indoors. There are some structures that are involved. There's something to do with the aftermath and driving, and we see various characters in their own little situations, and they're trying to get out, at least among the survivors anyway. And so I think this film does a really good job in establishing the parameters, providing the sense of scope, and also giving us still a sense of easily understanding the dynamics of the geography, the topography, and the environment itself. So I think it does a really good job with that. And still, it maintains a sense of epic scope, because we understand that once the disaster hits and we see all the aftermath and the people trying to save people and have these little mini adventures within various structures, I think it becomes this interesting type of tapestry, if you will, of disaster set pieces that are set and integrated within the overall expanse of the application of the avalanche disaster. So I think it does a pretty decent job, or more than a decent job, in pulling this off. Now, the special effects themselves, I think perhaps for some people they might seem to be a little bit hit or miss. And if you are in the maybe miss category, I think that's completely fine. I can understand that. But I think it does have the it does, I think, a pretty decent job in pulling off some of the special effects here. And indeed, within those moments, there are some pretty intense, scary, and somewhat violent moments that are quite shocking. They tend to maybe show up briefly and then they cut away to something else, but still, there are some jolts of quite gruesome shock value in some of the implementation of the special effects scene. So that gives this film a little bit of an edge to it, and I think that edge is sustained quite well over as I say, the various points of the geography, because as we know, this is not just one thing that happens momentarily. It's a huge thing that affects everyone at once, but we have to sustain it. We focus here, and then we focus here, we focus here, we focus here. And then when it's all said and done, we still have to deal with the aftermath, and we have to deal with other little mini disasters that erupt along the way. So even though we have this huge set piece, which pretty much is the central focus of the film, we have to deal with the stuff that comes afterwards, and that also becomes an intense, exciting, and suspenseful set of stories in and of themselves. So this is the film Avalanche. Once again, my friends, is this for everyone? I don't think so. And even if one is a fan of 1970s disaster movies, I can understand if this might fall somewhat low on your list. But for me, it is, as I was trying to suggest in this video, something that I think has a lot of potential, and it does have a lot of entertainment value for the reasons that I was trying to suggest. The expanse of the disaster as it's implemented itself, the soap opera nature of a lot of the story arcs, and also the way in which the performers, in particular the Mia Farrow, Rock Hudson, and Robert Forster dynamic is played out. In particular, I should say, the Rock Hudson performance is really surprising in terms of how serious and effective the character arc of that character is. And so I think these are ways in which this film can bring you along and provide another source of entertainment in this realm of genre of cinema that we can call 1970s disaster movies. This is the film Avalanche. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.